Welcome to The Mind of Money. I'm Douglass Lodmell, and today I have a very special guest. It's my brother, Benjamin Lodmell. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning.
So Benjamin is an economist and an investment advisor, and today I asked him to come so that we could talk about money, and in this case, the global state of money. And really, I mean, this is actually a series that we'd like to do. We really want to talk about the big picture, and I'd like to start at the very biggest place we can, kind of the global state of things. You and I have had a lot of conversations offline about how we've gotten to where we've gotten, and frankly, it's not what most people think. So let's start there. Let's just start with kind of the global positioning of the financial system, particularly with a focus on the United States.
Okay, well, you know, I find myself talking mostly to United States citizens and investors because they're the folks that really have the most catching up to do.
Right.
In terms of understanding why global economics matters to them.
Right.
So
we've been kind of in a bubble here. I mean, the United States is, in this sense, pretty provincial with the way we see investments and money.
It's because everything that they've ever needed has been here.
Right.
They were never forced to diversify their currency. Mm-hmm. There was always plenty of growth in their own financial markets, stable economy, and so why go somewhere else when you have everything that you need right here within the borders? That's changing.
Everybody was coming here. It just wasn't something we thought about.
That's changing, and so institutional investors, international investors, non-U.S. investors, sophisticated investors have been dealing with this issue for a long time. Right. But United States retail investors haven't, and so the burden is now on your average Joe with a net worth to become literate in macroeconomics.
Right.
And what that means is understanding that it's a big world out there, that the United States is a shrinking percentage of the world's economy. Right. And that the ground has shifted underneath us. And the financial crisis quite literally was the linchpin that ushered that era in.
You're referring to the summer of 2009.
Right, with the Lehman Brothers collapse.
Right, which was, I mean, that was earth-shaking to all of us. I mean,
absolutely.
Nobody thought that would happen, frankly.
Well, to imagine that Citibank is a state bank now, and to imagine that the most prestigious investment banks collapsed as a result of trading desks, that the balance sheets of our biggest financial institutions, AIG, were absolutely bankrupt.
Bankrupt, yeah.
So what it's done is it's just ushered in very quickly an era that economists have been predicting for many, many years.
Right.
And so really the issue, again, I try to refocus on what this all means for individual retail investors.
Right, my clients.
Right.
I mean, the dentist who has, you know, $500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million dollars, they've got it in a pension fund, they've got it in an investment, something, and how does this affect them? What do they need to do or think about?
It affects them, if they want to have wealth in 10 years, they have to act now. It's that simple. And the number one reason is because inflation is destroying everyone's ability to spend in the future. In other words, $1 million today is basically $200,000 in buying power in 10 years. Could be less because of the quantitative easing, the printing money that's been going on in the United States, because of the nature of how the productivity in the U.S. economy is decreasing. It means that there could even be higher inflation, especially in the areas that people with wealth spend money. So it's almost like a client the other day to me said, whatever you do, don't lose my money. And I said, well, there's one way I can promise you you will lose your money. Leave it in a municipal bond account or treasury bonds or in a bank CD and earn 1% a year. I promise you in 10 years your money will be gone. In other words, its purchasing power, the ability of that money to buy things will disappear. So
well, and this issue of inflation. Again, as an American, growing up, especially growing up after the hyper-stagflation or the hyperinflation, well, it wasn't hyperinflation, but the stagflation of the 70s, if you kind of start from there, inflation hasn't been something that Americans have perceived very much in their daily life.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is that it's going to become more perceptible to us.
Well, again, with the focus on investors, if investors' real incomes were increasing, that meant they weren't as concerned about inflation. Interest rates actually gave a return. The Federal Reserve is at zero interest rates now.
Right.
Bank CDs, in the last 20 years got 4 or 5% or more. In the late 70s, after that period of stagflation, interest rates were incredibly high.
Right.
14, 15%. So
I remember.
Yeah, I mean, but now there's no return in any kind of fixed income instrument. So basically, U.S. investors are in a position where they, for the first time in decades and decades, they're forced to brave the waters of the international markets and foreign currencies.
Right, and this is a big world, and this is really what we want to talk about is what that means. How does an investor even get informed about the topic, understand this big world? I'd like to go back to what you said about Economist and the fact that Economist for years have been predicting this. I saw actually it was on YouTube, it was called the Fiscal Wake Up Tour, and it was run by an economist named David Walker. And David Walker was the head of the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, which is basically the accountant to Congress. He tells Congress where we're at. He quit in protest of the direction Congress is going, and he started a tour called the Fiscal Wake Up Tour, and he literally went around from college university campus to college university campus, and I watched him with a dozen very well-respected economists at Berkeley give an hour-and-a-half series of lectures on the fact that David Walker believes we are going to have a devaluation of our currency and hyperinflation. I mean, this is from the chief accountant of Congress. He's talking as if we are Zimbabwe or Argentina. Help me understand that. Help the listeners understand what he's talking about.
I always like to communicate about macroeconomics in very simple terms. I mean, you just can't spend more than you have forever.
Right.
And the reason why the United States is an exceptional country is because it is the banker to all of the world's central banks. It's had effectively the ability to have an unlimited borrowing capacity.
Right, it was the monopoly banker, and you just had as much money as you needed.
Yeah, I mean, if all of the central banks on Earth effectively backed their currency with U.S. dollar, in other words, their foreign reserves, the money sitting in the central bank that gives value to their currency is U.S. dollar. That status is called a reserve currency, and the United States dollar was the world's reserve currency. So
that is a huge point, and I'd like to go into that in our next section. We're going to be here for several sessions, so I'd like you to follow us. Thank you for joining us for session 1 with Benjamin Lodmell, and we will see you next time on The Mind of Money.